When did too big to fail replace too smart to fail? When did trend overtake truth? When did putting clients first stop being second nature? For us, never.
You can't take a risk in any investment that if it goes wrong and you lose it all, that you endanger the ability of the firm to survive. And that's really what Wall Street forgot.
So when do you want to learn more about Stephens, one of the country's most successful investment banking firms?
All right, let's talk about where we are in the general economy at the end of 2020, start of 2021. What are some economic indicators that you are looking at that either give you a snapshot of what's happening and whether that makes you feel good about where we're at, or does it make you feel bad about where we're at?
Sure. Well, it's been volatile out there, and we're all watching a number of indicators. I think one of the things that we're watching closely is jobs and unemployment rates. That's something that obviously was challenged earlier last year and stabilized and improved, but it seems to be slowing down. At least the momentum has slowed down over the last few weeks. So that's something we're watching for. But obviously the stimulus that's recently been passed, the expectations are that the stimulus does contribute to the economy in the first part of the year, and especially helps some of those sectors and industries that are most challenged. That's kind of the intent of the stimulus, and we hope that it gets to the parts of the economy that need it the most. Because as you know, most of the economy is functioning well at this point, but there are certain parts of the economy that are still struggling, and we hope that the stimulus gets to those parts that needs it the most.
We're also dealing with a second wave of kind of COVID-19 really impacting people. We're seeing a rise in the cases, hospitalizations and such. But at the same time, we're also getting the rollout of the vaccinations for COVID-19. Are we kind of going 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, or do you think there's going to be enough to get ahead of the curve on this? And how does that impact things from an economic perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'd say I think we should expect continued volatility because lots of unknowns. But also keep in mind that the investment community is also always going to be looking forward and not looking at data points just for 1 week at a time, but they're looking out towards the spring and the summer. And the assumptions right now, I think, are that the vaccine is rolled out, and it's rolled out in the current of the original expectations from a few months ago. And I also think that the herd immunity will also have a important part of how much confidence we have in terms of travel, economic activity. For example, we're out planning some events for the rest of 2021, and right now what we're assuming is business travel the first part of the year continues to be pretty weak, but over the summer and into the fall, we're planning some of our events that would be in person, and that's our hope right now. But like everybody else, I think we're willing to pivot if we need to and go virtual because there's lots of uncertainty right now.
Yeah, and consumer confidence is so key, as you indicated there. That's really what drives 70-80% of economic activity. So let's talk about what we can expect. A Biden administration is going to be different than a Trump administration. Could see some more regulatory hurdles put up that were brought down over the last 4 years. Talk about another stimulus package, infrastructure package. What do the markets kind of want to see? I have seen some optimism here throughout this kind of transition. What do you think's the key things that would be most beneficial to moving the markets forward?
So first and foremost, I think the expectations of additional stimulus, additional support from the government. I think that's one thing that we're looking for, and others are as well, that the new administration continues to support the economy and the parts of the economy that need it the most. With that stimulus, I believe there's expectations for additional inflationary pressure. And with that, we've seen some yield curve steepening over the last few weeks. And with the yield curve steepening, I think that is a positive for the banking industry. If you go back to March of last year, when the Federal Reserve lowered rates overnight on a few separate occasions to near 0%, I think that was what the economy needed at the time, but it's also stressful and a challenge for a bank to earn much of a return when rates are so low. So what we're seeing is the stimulus and expectations for additional stimulus and potentially a stronger yield curve that could benefit the banks. What we don't know right now is on the administration, what type of leadership they expect to nominate and put through various leadership positions that could influence the banks, the Federal Reserve, the FDIC, the CFPB. There are just a number of positions that the new administration could nominate, and some of those nominations could be very good for banks. Some of those nominations potentially could be more challenging for banks. I'd say if it's more of a progressive that Biden wants to put through the administration, wants to see if they can get nominated, then that can make it more challenging for the banks. So that part is unknown right now. So I'd say there's some good stuff and some bad stuff with the new administration.
Will you keep your eyes on a lot of banks, particularly across the South, not to mention the Arkansas banks that are part of that as well? Assess for me the health of banks at this present time. They seem to have bumped up their loan loss reserves. They seem to have managed their profitability, although down. They are still profitable. What's your assessment of the health of the banking sector?
I'd say overall it's very strong. It's the balance sheets, which is what we focus on when it comes to the strength of the banks. The balance sheets are tremendous. Capital strong. The allowance of the loan loss reserves going into 2020 were just okay, but they were built up very strong throughout the year last year. And I'd say at this point we have very strong reserves. So we have strong capital, strong reserves. I think the local banks here in Arkansas and even in the region are all very strong. I think that the challenge for the banks is going to be how to find some growth, because when rates are as low as they are, it's more challenging for banks to find ways to grow. So feel good about the quality and the balance sheets. We'll see what 2021 brings as far as the growth for the banks.
And obviously, the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, was a huge factor this past year for a lot of banks. They administered those programs for a lot of their customers and their clients. It wasn't very profitable for them, though. Do you think banks want to see? Are they enthusiastic about another round of PPP?
Well, I think the banks are excited that the stimulus includes additional PPP support, because these banks want to support their borrowers. And if their borrowers need additional stimulus, additional impact from PPP, then I think the banks will be more than happy to help offer that program through the stimulus. That being said, I think we were concerned about a number of portfolios and borrowers back in the summer time frame, but it's been very impressive to see how various businesses, various borrowers have adapted to the current economic status, and just the number of borrowers that needed PPP wasn't as much as we thought it was going to be. And we're seeing some forgiveness right now from the SBA, which was the original intent. So my expectation is that the PPP, the second round here, is rolled out and it is supportive, but it's very limited in terms of the number of borrowers that actually need additional PPP support.
All right, last question for you. Care to make a crystal ball prediction of what we're going to be talking about 6 months from now?
Well, I think one of the more exciting things that we think we'll see in 2021 is M&A. It's no secret there's lots of banks in the U.S. There's several thousand, and M&A has been a key theme now for the last 30 years in the U.S. Amongst the banks. We took a slight pause in 2020 just to make sure the banks' balance sheets were in good shape. But now that we've confirmed bank balance sheets are indeed strong, I think you're going to see a number of acquisitions, merger of equals. I think that will rebound very strong in 2021, and that makes it exciting from an investor standpoint. I think there's some interesting banks, interesting combinations that we could see as a result. And I think 6 months from now, we'll be talking even more about this. So that's one thing that we're excited about for 2021.
That's pretty exciting for a bank analyst too, to be talking about mergers and acquisitions, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, Matt Olney with Stephens Incorporated. We appreciate you very much. Great insight. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Roby.